Hello. Let's talk about migration. I think we have seen a lot of news over the last 3 months of Kenyans who were stuck at the border of Myanmar, Vietnam, Thailand, all to pursue better pastures or better opportunities that are offered in those countries. However, another thing that has also caught my attention is the two publication by the New York Times that has really focused on Kenyan migrant workers. The first publication that was done that week of March between that week the second week of March, it was mentioned that Kenya is the highest migrant of domestic worker to Saudi Arabia. And that is not just the New York Times, but that is the global statistics that Kenya migrates the highest number of domestic worker to the Gulf countries. However, the same publication also brought out some very key concern that even today, as we talk about femicide in the country, it did highlight that 55 of domestic workers were killed just last year alone in Saudi Arabia. That today, when you talk about femicide, most of the things we talk about is those intimate occurrences. The thing that has been brought out to us is that we've seen women who loved this guy. They did trust this guy who ended up doing away with her through murder. But one thing that is still constant is we still face femicide within domestic work. But for them, they die in line of duty. That is the only difference. They die in line of duty, and most of the cases is done by their employers. That today, as we talk about improving or even strengthening the domestic work sector in the country, I do recognize the efforts that the government has actually put in place to ensure that safe migration is the order of the day. I remember last year when we were commemorating the International Day for Domestic Worker, the PS by then did mention something, and he said that the government is going to revise the wage order. And another thing that again he also mentioned was that government is also thinking through, or even government is holding discussion to come up with a migrant fund. And this fund was going towards supporting the integration of the returnees. We have cases of domestic workers, both men and women, of course, who've returned back to the country with nothing. They come back even more miserable than the way they left. So this fund or this kitty was supposed to support them. However, I would have really loved if the PS also did mention on the mechanisms that the country is also putting in place in order to safeguard domestic work. We don't say that people should not leave the country to pursue their dreams or even pursue other opportunities, recognizing that the opportunities that are already there in the country, it's quite shrinking and it is very competitive. That today, even when you talk about AI and how AI is also transforming the domestic work, we have people who think or prefer to go working outside the country, which is okay. At the end of the day, you cannot hold someone from migrating. The only thing that you can do is to provide all the necessary information that even as you think about leaving the country, these are the realities in that continent or even in the country that you wish to go and work in. The issue about colorism that was really brought out by the New York Times, that there is a way the Gulf countries perceive the black color or people from the African origin. If you are already labeled or even addressed by the color of your skin, you can think through even on how other issues will also be considered. Look at your work environment, the time that you also perform that domestic work, the family that again you are also in. So I think the recent discussion or even the recent news, that is what caught my attention. For the Kenyans who were stranded at the border of Vietnam and Myanmar, I am happy that I think it was yesterday or a day before yesterday that they were repatriated back to the country. That is a very good indication of the effort that the country is also making. But how best can we ensure that we are contributing to safe migration? Because if we are exporting 247 in a year, then 55 of them return back as cargoes. What is the status of the 224 that the New York Times did not again highlight? We need to think through on labor migration. That is the thing for me. If we can only manage to make migration to be safe and also just ensure that also the safeguards are also being addressed and are put in place to ensure that our women and men or our sisters and brothers who are leaving the country, we are sure that they're going to a good home. They're going to work under very, very human employers. They are going to work within the labor requirements, the minimum global labor requirements that they will be exposed to. So if you know someone who's thinking about migrating, especially migrating to the Gulf countries, and the engagement will be on domestic work, you might just wish to have a sit down with them, because the best thing, we will not stop them from leaving the country, but the best we can do as our sister or our brother's keeper, it is to let them know that these are the realities that you're going to face, or these are the bare minimums that you might likely encounter that will enable them make a sound decision. And I think we can just make migration to be safe.